In 2036, a violent civil war erupted in Eastern Europe. U.S. troops were stationed as peacekeepers on this lawless new frontier, a frontier controlled by a ruthless criminal warlord called Viktor Koval, a ghost that few people have seen. To combat Koval's growing power, the Pentagon has deployed robotic soldiers, GUMPs, to active duty for the first time. The battle was fierce enough to make the U.S. Army cornered, and 2 easy soldiers were trapped amid the militia's onslaught. A professional pilot named Lieutenant Thomas Harp saw the worsening conditions plus the arrival of a car that turned out to be enemy reinforcements. To react with his spirit, Harp needed permission to deploy a Hellfire missile, but he did not get permission from Sergeant Miller, who was in the field leading the actual SNAC troops, and Captain Bryden, his own superior. However, Harp bravely ignored it, and eventually, the missile attack killed 2 Marines trapped on the battlefield, but saved the lead lieutenant and the remaining 38 Marines who would have been killed by the launcher. Due to his recklessness, Harp was almost dragged to court-martial, but Captain Bryden defended him by considering all Harp's achievements until now. As punishment, the lieutenant was transferred under Captain Leo, who was at Camp Nathaniel, the U.S. base of operations in Ukraine, which was in the war zone. It was a new challenge for Harp because he had never been placed directly on the battlefield before. When he arrived there, he could see GUMPs in person and feel the spirit of the soldiers in the field. Colonel Eckhart had found out what Harp had done, and it was a difficult act to accept. Block 13 and Follow the Music was the clue Eckhart gave to meet Captain Leo, a severe warning from Colonel Eckhart that Leo was different from them. It turned out that the place referred to by the colonel was the GUMP's warehouse. After following the sound of classical music, Harp finally found Captain Leo. Harp was very surprised when the man not only knew Harp's track record but also knew his fiance's name and the location where Harp would get married. Leo looked like an attendant who cared for groceries but was actually a ghost hunter known as MARSOC or Marine Special Operations. The meaning of ghost here was Viktor Koval, the leader of Krasny. Krasny was a movement that had the support of Russia because it sought to reunite Ukraine with Russia, while its opponents were the militia rebels formed to defend Ukrainian independence. Viktor Koval did not hesitate to commit genocide with nuclear weapons. According to intelligence, Koval was the person responsible for the explosion of the bomb in Kiev using Russian uranium. The blast caused 25,000 people to die. Other information also mentions Koval wanted to control the perimeter system. It was a system that worked automatically to send nukes as a counterattack from Russia. Who knows what madness Koval would do, but certainly it would threaten the world. Harp and Leo prepared to deliver the vaccine to the hospital because the cholera virus had spread rapidly. They would meet Leo's informant, who would tell Koval's next plan. How surprised Harp was when he saw a changed body. It turned out that Leo was a highly advanced and experimental android super soldier masquerading as a human officer. He was the 4th-generation bioengineer, and Leo needed Harp's trust to be his assistant on the battlefield. Suddenly, Miller and his troops attacked Harp and beat him up because they were considered the ones who killed their colleagues. There was no resistance, and not even an apology was uttered because that would not make the 2 poor soldiers who had died come back to life. Leo was a prototype, and that's all that could be explained at the moment, but even though he was not human, Leo ordered Harp to respect him like any other commander. Their journey from the headquarters to the hospital was hampered by a truck carrying aid in an accident. There was tension between the Marines and armed locals. Fortunately, Leo was able to reduce the pressure so that the Marines could go back to collecting aid and armed locals could carry the bodies of their fallen comrades. However, pro-Russian insurgents ambushed the locals and Marines, leading to a firefight. Because they didn't have much time, they decided to go to the refugee camp on foot while the Marines remained behind to engage the insurgents. It turned out that Leo carried out the mission without Miller, even Eckhart knowing. War is something bad, and sometimes we have to get dirty to make a good change, Leo said. Later, when they arrived at Damascus, a mysterious man had been lurking. After Leo handed over the vaccine, the man immediately went into action. With his sophisticated weapon, he tried to kill Leo and Harp, but it did not happen because Leo's very telling shot directly hit the neck of the mysterious man who regarded the American military as pigs. Leo tortured the insurgent for information. Unfortunately, the mysterious man remained silent, so Leo handed him over to the militia group. Harp found a deviation here because Leo did not report the situation to the headquarters, and even Leo continued his mission to meet informants elsewhere. The reason was reasonable because he did not want to waste time dealing with bureaucracy. Although it was still an offense, inevitably, Harp was forced to follow Leo because, after all, it was impossible to return to headquarters under these circumstances. Leo and Harp met their contact Sophia, an orphanage headmistress. Sophia was concerned about what was happening in Damascus, but she also felt grateful that Leo had managed to deliver the vaccine. After being reassured that Harp was utterly safe, Sophia explained Koval's plan to gain access to the nuclear weapons Russia had left over from the Cold War. Koval needed a secret code so he could operate the atomic weapons. After the Cold War, an FSK agent managed to find it, and according to rumors, it was kept in a safe somewhere in the city. Sophia did not know the location, but she knew who could provide valid information about it. Sophia led them to an arms dealer who knew the site of a bank vault containing nuclear launch codes that Koval was looking for. Again, Leo deviated when Leo brought illegal weapons from Sophia. There was nothing Harp could say to refute Leo. He just looked at the little children playing without realizing that most of them were orphaned because of the missile fire from the drone controlled by Harp. The person Sophia was referring to was Varric Oshlak, who was also an arms dealer. An unpleasant welcome from Oshlak's men began Leo's tantrum. Not only was Leo good at shooting, but he was also very good at fighting. His swift movements and powerful punches could knock down several people simultaneously. Harp also tried to help, but Sophia forbade him. Because now it was Sophia's turn to act, her agile movements knocked down the opponents. Oshlak, who was cornered, immediately told that Koval had just bought XR-12 from him. It was one of the types of Russian guns. Most likely, the person they were looking for was in Dnipro Investment Bank, and Harp was rushing while Sophia immediately shot Oshlak in the head for betrayal. On the way to the bank, Harp finally found out that Leo had used him to pass the blame. Of course, Harp refused and was about to stop, but Leo's words were so convincing that he could catch Koval. And Harp again followed him and helped remove the tracking device so the Russians could not detect his whereabouts. A moment later, they arrived at the bank. Leo managed to knock out one of the guards, but his lack of experience made Harp panic that he almost shot civilians. Leo asked Harp to stand down and contact the others while he took care of some cresting troops. Leo fought so well that even the tough Russian UMPs could not stop him. Meanwhile, Harp contacted Colonel Eckhart for help and executed Koval, who was in the building. Harp felt relieved to rescue a few of the civilians caught in the crossfire. Not long after, the US GUMPs appeared and were followed by Russian GUMPs with the hostages. Initially, Harp tried to negotiate, but the US GUMPs fired a shot right into the head of the Russian GUMP's commander so that the inevitable shootout occurred. A drone strike called in by Eckhart destroyed the bank and several buildings, leading the military command to believe Koval dead and Leo destroyed. Seeing all the events was like feeling firsthand what Harp had been doing where innocent people died and were only considered victims. Leo reunited with Harp. The captain managed to get the code but still refused to report their success. It turned out that Harp had been deceived all this time into helping him evade the eye of military command. Leo has gained Harp's complete trust so that this robot can no longer be controlled, and according to Leo, Harp should be grateful because his life has been saved. He knocked out Harp and left him on the side of the road, where he was picked up by Sophia's men. After Harp woke up again and was dragged to the rebel headquarters. Koval was 100% alive, and the idea of attacking the bank was purely Leo's plan to seize the code while being free from the US military. Leo was indeed very cunning, but one thing Leo could not do was lie by pretending not to feel the foul intentions behind a good deed. Although the US military was on the rebels' side, it was one of the US agendas to destabilize Russia by expanding the conflict in the area so that the peace they dreamed of was increasingly challenging to achieve. Sophia was also completely ignorant of Leo's plans with the nukes and the number of casualties caused because, just like the US military said, they were just collateral. At the same time, Captain Leo arrived at Koval's headquarters with his code. He would reboot the perimeter system and eliminate the Vector and his men according to the plan. Again, Leo was shown his extraordinary abilities of strength, speed, and sniper fire, making the entire Kresny army dead in just a few minutes. Harp, who was speechless, escaped to return to base. He explained everything to Colonel Eckhart and Miller, including Leo's persuasive ability that created the Paradox commands. No one else could track Leo unless they contacted the corporal pilot Mandy Bale to track the car from the conflict that Leo used. It turned out that Harp's guess was correct. At this time, Leo was in the area around the Nosky district, precisely on the Russian border. Colonel Eckhart could not send troops there because it would trigger a US war with the Russian state. Finally, Harp volunteered to infiltrate the silo and found Leo had taken over. If it failed, Harp wanted Bale to blow up the silo to stop the missile launch. Later, Harp arrived at the silo mission, the Russian border. Although he had not found Leo, the bodies of soldiers lying around were enough to hint that Leo was there. In the launch room, Leo suddenly attacked Harp and managed to disarm him. Harp's neck was pressed so hard that he could not breathe. Even though he had fired the shot, the grip was not released until finally, Harp was unconscious. Then Leo continued to activate the missile. 5 minutes of time, he set for the rocket to head to the US. Fortunately, Harp, who had woken up, immediately shot Leo with his steel-penetrating weapon. And it turned out that it was so effective against Leo that it made his body destroyed. Leo explained the real purpose of launching nuclear missiles to strike the United States to prevent them from fighting more wars in the future. He did it because, with technological development, the US and competing countries would continue to create sophisticated armed robots until finally they booked the world's first fully automatic, just like Leo. On the other hand, Harp had other thoughts. He believed humans would learn and change for the better. Finally, in the remaining 30 seconds, Harp escaped as the silo was destroyed by a drone strike before the missile could launch, killing Leo and saving the United States. Harp was heading back to base over the Russian border. With his fieldwork now over, Harp returned to Camp Nathaniel and received praise from Eckhart, who informed him that he would return to his stateside drone pilot duties. So, what do you think about this movie? Leave it in the comments below, and if you liked the video, please like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you in the next video.